Great. Hello. Welcome everyone to Be Waste Wise webinar this month. I'm Akanksha Singh. I'm the community builder at Be Waste Wise. And most of you all know that Be Waste Wise is a non-profit organization, and we've been organizing such waste dialogues on monthly basis, addressing the need for knowledge dissemination on waste management since 2013. If you see the value in making such diverse sustainability dialogues free of cost to anyone and everyone, then please support us in our mission. We will share the donation page link over the chat as well. Now, for today's topic of discussion, we have an all women panel of experts giving us an inspiring and very practical session on how the sports community can embrace, reuse, repair, and redistribute to reduce waste, cut cost, and open up new opportunities for participation. To moderate this session, we have with us again Emma. Emma is one of UK's leading specialists on circular economy and sustainability in businesses. She has worked directly with businesses on sustainability for over 25 years now, and she founded Lighthouse Sustainability in 2020 to deliver impactful advice, coaching, and training. We thank you, Emma, for joining in and taking up this panel. And as far as the all panel of experts, we have with us Wendy Carter. She's the founder of Kit Round. Rebecca Evans, she's a freelance apparel designer, consultant from Feral Crayon. And Heather Davis, she's a co-founder of Reaction. Before we proceed further, I would like to make a few announcements. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel and on our website. We request you all to please use the Q&A function for your questions separately for the panel, and use the chat function for networking, for sharing your views and opinions, for your work that you've been doing in this field. Use this as a networking platform and share your LinkedIn profiles with all of us. We will be sharing the panelists' LinkedIn profiles as well on the link so that you can connect with them personally for future interactions. So back to you, Emma. Over to your panel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Akanksha. What a lovely introduction to my special panel today. Thank you for joining me, Becky, Wendy, and Heather. What's lovely about these panels is that often none of us know each other. So we're trying to bring specialists from around the world. So even before we started today, we've made a couple of connections between the panel that hopefully we'll take forward. And Akanksha's right. We really want everybody here to use this time to connect with each other as well. So we're 40 odd people in the audience, so we're going to crack on. So what are we talking about today then? Reuse and repair, redistribution of this category of textiles, sports gear, but we're going to include outdoor gear in that. And I'm really pleased that I've got Rebecca here from the design end of the topic. So Rebecca specializes in design of technical and outdoor clothing and performance clothing. So we're going to be talking about how we embed circularity in that area. And then we've got Wendy, who's the founder of Kit Round, which is an online circular platform dedicated to redistribution and reselling. So I want to talk to Wendy about the business model behind reuse, because we often rely on the third sector or community to deal with this waste. And then I'm really pleased also to introduce Heather, who's joining us from France. Heather, is that right? Yeah. And Heather is a co-founder of Reaction, who those of you that have been following Heather will know has really generated a lot of interest around the awareness around repair, engaging some new ideas, some new skills. So, and I think Heather's going to share with us a couple of items of clothing as well that they've worked on. I also want to talk about the power of networks and how we collaborate a lot more on this topic with you all. Before I hand over to you guys or ask you questions, Akanksha, can you pop the first poll up, please? And we'll just get the audience kind of warmed up a little bit. So this poll will come up on your screen. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think the most important success factor is? Where should we be putting our effort? Is it access to equipment, specialist repair equipment, specialist components that's holding people back? Is it the lack of instructions? How do you even do that repair? Or maybe around things like reuse. Should we have legislation that says, you know, single-use items shouldn't be sold in this field? We mentioned design. consumer awareness, or skills. Skills often comes up as a gap. So I'll give you a second there. Okay. So legislation's coming out pretty high. So is product design. That maybe won't surprise you, Becky. So we can talk a little bit about that straight off the bat. Okay. Oh, the train went past, sorry. Great, okay. So most people have had a chance to have a go at the poll. So the clear leaders there are product design, holding people back, and the lack of legislation. Becky, shall I just come to you as you're the designer on the panel today?
Lucky me.
And the others maybe can follow up. Why are we not designing for reuse and repair? Give us your sort of history on that.
I think probably because mostly big companies are designing to sell as many things as possible with the biggest margin possible. And so that means that sometimes the process that you go through kind of misses some stages and things don't get tested properly. The correct materials or the most appropriate materials aren't always used because price is prioritized to get the company the biggest margin. And also, the more repairable your items are, the less likely someone is to buy a new item from you. I don't necessarily think that's always been the case. I think that the way that the landscape has shifted over like the last, well, at least since I've been in the industry of kind of design, has changed. And so people expect to buy things more frequently and are expected to. So that's the biggest driver, I think, of why things are not designed for repair and longevity.
So you're saying is consumer demand driving that behavior as opposed to maybe brand?
I think it's constructed. I think the consumer has been indoctrinated into thinking that it's necessary to buy more and more things, and that's why. So I never ever blame the everyday person. I think
I'm with you there.
We've been told we need a new jacket for this, and we need a different pair of leggings if we're doing running or if we're doing, you know. So there's with the messaging that everybody gets is that you need more and different things, and
yeah, that's so interesting. And Tim's just put in the chat straight away, what about sponsorship? We've seen huge issues with brands and sports teams, etc., etc. So yeah, I know we want to pick up on that, Tim, definitely. Heather, do you want to come in there, because I know you are repairing? So what is let's talk about this design issue. You know, how are you overcoming that lack of design? Let's just talk about repair for a minute.
Yeah, there's definitely some obstacles that we've had to overcome. So a good example of this would be a waterproof jacket where the zip stops working. Now, zips in the old days used to be sewn in, didn't they, Becky? And now you get these almost invisible seam zips which are glued in, and there's hardly any material on either side. If that zip breaks and you need to take that zip out and replace it, it's really, really difficult. The margins are so small. And that's an example of brands really cutting costs. So not leaving, nice seams like that you can then reuse afterwards. They're trimming the fabric to within a millimeter of its life. To cut corners. So we are struggling with things like that. But, we've got a workshop and we're coming up with always innovating and trying to come up with solutions. So
you're having to reinvent solutions, really, Heather. I think sometimes with repair, people assume it's all sort of the old methods and, we used to darn things and we had lost those skills. But it sounds to me, because these fabrics and designs are so modern, you're having to reinvent.
Yeah, definitely. Because also the materials that we're dealing with now, like we're very unusual that we would deal with 100% wool socks, for example, that can be darned and repaired like that. But we're working with fabrics that if you make a hole in them, suddenly they're not waterproof anymore or anything like that. So yeah, you have to go through some of the processes that the brands would go through, like taping seams and taking quite a lot of care. It's actually it's quite specialized in some senses. But then you also need to be really practical about what are you actually going to use this garment for? Does it really matter if there's a few holes in it, and is it going to, you know, ruin your day on the mountain if a little bit of rain gets through or whatever? So we tend to take quite a pragmatic approach that sort of balances time and cost with you know, just being able to get a garment back out there again.
Yeah, and that links a little bit to what Becky was saying about the consumer. And I'm not going to say consumer demands, actually, Becky, because I agree with you. I think we've been kind of fed this narrative that you can't wear your your leggings to go running, you know, or something like that. So, and I know it's the case. You see people, I saw a post a while ago on LinkedIn from someone who was a cyclist saying, you know, how did I acquire this much kit? I probably tagged you in it, Heather, just
Yeah.
you know, a sort of moment of madness where you look at it and you've got 32 shirts or something and 20 pairs of leggings or whatever. And you know, the less kind amongst us would maybe say, oh, like all the gear and no idea, when you focus more on the gear than you are your, you know, your specialism. Wendy, I'm going to come to you on that question. You know, is this just a case? What do you see with the consumer? You know, are people willing, as Heather was saying, to be a bit more flexible about their kit when they're coming to you?
Yeah, I think the challenge with sports kit is obviously it's built to last. You know, you buy this kit, the trainers and the football boots, you know, they don't get worn out. It's very, very rare they get worn out, particularly with children, because clearly they grow and they stop sport and all that sort of stuff. So the kit that we get either donated or listed, there's so much life left in it. I think
that's good to know, because I think some people think, you know, especially with t-shirts and things, that they're very poor quality.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously there's certain items that, you know, that they do get worn, and they get worn a lot, but you really have to be, certainly things like leggings, you know, you've really got to be going some every single.
I've got some 10-year-old leggings, I'm sure. Yeah,
there you go. And there's certain brands that, you know, in 20 years time those leggings will be fine. What gets fed out, of course, from, you know, whether it crosses over into fashion, is that you have to have this color because it's this season. At the end of the day, does it make you run any faster? Does it make you, you know, perform better? No, of course, you know, for things like that it doesn't. Arguably at elite level, that's a different conversation, but we get a lot of kit that comes into us that may have played for one season or be worn half a dozen times, or actually never worn at all. And you know,
yes,
sitting with tag on, and you know, and it's got plenty of life left in it.
Yeah, definitely seeing that. So I'm going to go to Tim's question now, which is about sponsorship. I'm just going to ask you all generally, do you think this situation is getting worse? Heather's nodding. Becky, I think you mentioned that you'd been to an event recently when McLaren were talking about this.
Yeah.
You know, what were they saying?
I think it was a collection of lots of people from the performance sports industry, kind of discussing a similar topic to we're talking about today, and ways that brands and people, you know, could help. And the sponsorship issue came up, and the thing of people like, you put demands on what needs to go on a garment, and then that makes the garment redundant. And one of the things, I mean, we were throwing ideas on the table. Some of them were more disruptive than others, but sort of the rule of like, don't put anything on a garment that means that it gives it an end of life, like it gives a sell by date. And also not that a sponsor can never make restrictions over how a garment can then be reused. If it can't be worn by the team because the sponsorship has changed, then that there should be no restriction over what can happen to that garment afterwards. Because there are plenty of things that you can do with perfectly good kit, just because it's got, I mean, as Heather knows, what you can do, you can patch over, you can rework a garment. But if you're like, oh, but I have to make sure that there's no little logo showing because of the sponsorship deal, it's really restrictive. So
I understand that we might think that, Becky, and that might be, you know, good practice. I'm already thinking, is there a charter? Is there a manifesto that people can sign up to? You know, that sounds like something that we might want to do in outdoor sports, because I know there's a lot of enthusiasm, particularly in outdoor sports, around, you know, around reducing the environmental impact. But I'm thinking back to you know, I've got two kids who play rugby, and their dad is a coach, and he happens to work at Premiership Rugby Club. And so every season, you know, all the kit has to go. And we end up trying to redistribute some of it. There's this whole issue about it shouldn't be resold and etc. etc. And Tim says, you're prohibited also for putting that into reuse. I mean, just on that point, Heather, come on in. What do we do? I mean, it's all very well us saying we think this should happen, but what do the big brands think? What do the sponsors think, I guess?
Yeah, I think you've made some really good points there, and I think there's sort of a two-pronged approach here. One is obviously this idea of having a manifesto that says what you can and can't do with the kit, and obviously trying to make it so that the kit is as available as possible after its initial use. But then there are things that you can do after the fact. So I've got here, I don't know if you can see, this is a Patagonia kind of gilet thing.
Yeah.
That was used for a Google event. And there's another event logo on the inside here. And what we've done is simply patch it over with a patch that's been screen printed onto waste fabric and then sewn onto
just patched it over
the garment. And now this has been in use for I think it's a few years now. So that's one way that we can deal with it. Another way to think about it might be to have sponsors' logos in Velcro and have some Velcro on the kit so that they can be peeled off and next year's sponsor can be put on.
Especially for high value items, like coaches' jackets, high vis, all that stuff that can last for years.
Yeah, exactly. So we see that we're patching over ski school uniforms. So ski schools typically buy more uniforms than they use, and these are really high quality Gore-Tex jackets, top of the range, North Face, things like that. And they cannot have those going back out on the mountain because they don't want people masquerading as ski instructors when they don't have those qualifications.
Well, I understand.
We're patching in some cases with seam taping, but quite often we're not because they don't tend to get that wet. You can do iron on, there's all sorts of different types of patching you can do as well. So I would encourage communities to explore these opportunities. And also I wanted to bring in that idea of community there as well, because a lot of the kind of solutions that we see, especially around repair, starting to get brands offering repair. But actually what you'll find is you've got loads of people within your community who are really capable and who would love to help do these kind of repairs and patching and keeping kit patching for longer. And that's basically what Reaction's done, is try to tap into those community circular economy solutions, because we believe that those are the ones that it keeps money in your community rather than sending it to shareholders elsewhere. It provides meaningful work for people, and you make connections. So, you don't just, when you send off an item for repair to Patagonia, it goes to Amsterdam or somewhere. Fine, and that's good. And the United Repair Centre do a great job, but you're not getting that local connection. And once you know that person who can do your repairs, you might find something in common, you might be able to work with them again on another project, and there's an exchange there. And in a period of extreme loneliness, we're more connected than ever, but also kind of more disconnected than ever in a face-to-face situation. Maybe a bit talking about this on webinars, perhaps not quite a bit.
We understand.
But you actually forge those connections and you strengthen your community as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And talking a lot about repair on other Be Waste webinars, we're seeing the repair movement, repair cafe, the restart network, and that sort of thing. And at least in the UK, I'd love to hear from those of you around the world. Do you have these equivalent repair networks starting up? Just tell us a little bit about the Reaction network, Heather. How has that grown from an idea, and how many organizations are now in that network?
Yeah, so it grew with an idea. It started with a Fix-It Day in Courchevel, which is a ski resort near to where we live here. That Gavin Fernie-Jones, who's the co-founder of Reaction, decided to hold one day. And he just said to people, like, come on, let's do something. Let's create a bit of joy. Let's, stop thinking about all the waste that's coming out of resort, and let's do something positive. So bring any kit that you don't use out of your wardrobes, and we'll resell it, and we'll have a band, and we'll have some biscuits, and we'll have a sewing machine, and we'll repair stuff, and we'll just have a really nice day. And so we did that once, and then we did it another few times, and that gave rise to One Tree at a Time, which is the not-for-profit that has a little hub here now that does all the patching on ski jackets like this one. So that's their logo. And this is a really good quality ski jacket that used to belong to a chalet company. And One Tree at a Time was founded, and then he had this challenge. Somebody said to him, how do you scale up the impact of something like One Tree? Because it was having a huge impact, still does have a huge impact in our community. And I call it a hyper-local brand, because people want to wear this One Tree logo, and they wear it with pride, you know, a bit like somebody would wear a Patagonia logo, because they want, you know, they want to put the message out that they care where their stuff comes from, and they care about their mountain environment here.
Yeah.
And so on. So got this hyper-local brand, and we're like, how can we scale this? And we're like, oh, I don't know. Well, we don't want to go around like telling people what to do and opening like hubs and trying to get them to get all the kit and resell it and whatever. But the ideas are really worth sharing. So that's where we started from. We started from this idea of wanting to spread and share ideas, and also learn more from other people who are doing similar things to us. So we just started, we didn't have a thing. We just created an Instagram account and a LinkedIn account, and started pooling our ideas, and like we were on the phone every other day going, what about this? What about this? Have you seen this? And then people started connecting with us, and then we had 5, I think, organizations to start with, and now we're over 60, including Becky. So yeah, really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And over what countries are you operating in, Heather? What does React?
So we're 70% of our members are based in the UK, and the other 30% are spread far and wide, as far as Canada, US, Colombia, New Zealand, Romania. So yeah, we're
awesome. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, obviously they can drop you a line if they're in this space and they want to know a bit more about, because I think this whole being part of a collective is really interesting. And I'm going to come to this question now of scale, because Wendy, I know you started Kit Round a year ago, so you are definitely in startup phase, and scale must be something that you think about, you know, morning, noon and night. So tell us a little bit, you know, firstly, what's the last 12 months been like, and how do you think you're going to be able to scale?
No, well, thank you. Yeah, just literally 17th of June, we switched the website on. Preparation prior to that, but that was the sort of first day we went live. Yes, we are in startup, scale up, sort of grey hair mode, and you know, and finding solutions every day, really. So there's a lot of good people who are trying to either resell, redistribute, or reuse, or repair kit. You know, there's a lot of people out there, and they're all trying to do a very brilliant and amazing thing. And when we started Kit Round, it was initially a really simple proposition that if you've got people that got kit, sports kit, and you've got people who haven't got sports kit. So to me, it was a really simple thing, right? How do we join those two people together? You know, that world wasn't and isn't as simple as I thought it would be. But one thing we were really, really surprised about was how much kit there is out there. There is so much sports kit out there. Every household has garages, cupboards, you know, attics, whatever. And it's how do you get people to feel comfortable and give them a solution that gets that kit back into circulation, or we call it back in the game. And then how do you tell people that are looking for kit, you know, that this is a solution. So the scale for us really came from, right, we need to create this huge kit bag effectively, where you can come to Kit Round and you can list, you can buy, you can donate, you can do whatever you want to do on the site, but you can have your own shop. So effectively you can create a kit shop on the site and you can list your own items, or we can help you to do all that. So it's really giving a voice to all of those, whether it's a PTA, it's a club, it's a community group, it's a brand or whatever, that actually you can you can get this stuff out the cupboards, out of the storerooms or whatever, and you can get it listed and you can get it sold. So the scale up comes really from trying to create a huge collective where we can bring everybody together under one umbrella, promote it like crazy, and then hopefully people will then see that that's a solution that enables them to get their stuff listed and sold.
I love that, because I'm a big fan of business models. So, you know, as we came on, I don't, you know, as much as I love community, Heather, I love, you know, what you said about bringing people together. I don't feel like this ought to be a charity problem. You know, it's sort of charities are there to solve, you know, social problems. And actually, going back to what we said right at the beginning, this is a problem we've created, or brands have created, or, you know. So I think, you know, going back to the manifesto, Sam says actually UEFA have a kit charter coming out. So I can already see there's a need to join those sorts of things. And to your point, Wendy, you know, how do we make this business model the norm? You know, with so many circular business models now, the norm, you know, Etsy sprung to mind. You know, everyone knows you can go on Etsy and start a shop. Why wouldn't you go on KitRound and start a shop?
And this is what thank you. Now, this is what we're trying to say. You know, if you take the average household in the UK, they've got about £400 worth of kit. It's sat there doing.
That's an interesting stat. Okay.
You know, and so that kit, if you wouldn't leave £400 in your wardrobe, you know, you just wouldn't. And I think there is a little bit of sentimentality around sports kit, particularly if it's kids' football boots. You know, it's almost like, you know, sort of, what do we do? What do we do? I don't want a charity. I'm certainly not going to, you know, take them to the tip or to
they hang on to stuff.
They hang on to stuff. So if you give them a reason and say, right, okay, list your kit, you can take the proceeds from the sale, or you can donate the proceeds to support grassroots sports, which is another option, that it seems to resonate with parents, because we're doing a good thing for lots of different reasons, not just from obviously an environmental impact, but also
so there's a charity kickback as well, a donation kickback for okay. I really like that model. You know, I think that's great. With a few people in the chat have been saying about grassroots kit isn't reused season to season. There's a few people I know, you know, Hayley's got kids who play sport as well. I'm absolutely positive we've got more than 400 quid's worth in my house, absolutely overflowing with it. So Heather's made the point about when you do donate to charity, a lot of that clothing becomes exported. Okay, really, really good points. Just as an aside, I think this is one for you, Heather. Josephine in the Q&A has said, can you recommend any resources for learning how to mend more technical fabrics? So maybe that's something you could go back to her on. If anyone else has got any questions like that, do pop them in the Q&A and I'll keep coming back and forward. So we had some questions before we started, and one of those was about entrepreneurship. And Wendy, you know, you're in this trying to scale. How will you now then work with, let's think about where the problem originates with the brands and the sponsors and the, I don't know, the clubs. And then you've got a solution. How do we physically do that? Because there aren't enough hours in the day, Wendy, are there, for you to get, you know, how are you sort of starting that? I know you said before we joined that you're working with universities. Is that a key route for you?
Well, the universities is one route, but we've started to work with national governing bodies as well.
Okay, interesting. Great.
Because, they have obviously a huge fan base and following, but they also have an issue over kit and disposal of or redistribution of kit. So, and it's great kit, you know, there's nothing wrong with it at all, and it needs to find a new home, and it needs to be used, and it needs to be worn. So they have 2 or 3 challenges. One is finding a sustainable solution, but also getting people to participate in their particular sport. So if we can unlock the value at sitting in that kit in their various storerooms or whatever, then clearly that's answering 3 or 4 different problems or questions. So for us, it's trying to work with teams and clubs that have got scale, as in followers and audience, and then they will obviously then talk to their fan base, and their fan base then come to KitRound to either list or to purchase. So that's the approach. You know, it's a mammoth task. We're not underestimating it. We've got a long road ahead. We're one step on the ladder, but the feedback we've had has been really, really positive. So yeah, we're one step at a time. Nice.
I really like that. So unlocking the value, I've written down, Wendy.
Yeah.
So Becky, I want to come back to you because we were talking about design and cutting cost. And I've covered this on the podcast as well. You know, this how things are designed now, and you know, hems and all the rest of it. So it's a fascinating area. How do we rewind, if you like, or not quite rewind? How do we put the value back in so that at the design stage, someone can count that and say, well, actually, there is a value in this, making this repairable or a bit more durable. And some brands seem to have got this, Becky. You know, Dr. Martens, for example, or you mentioned, you know, working with Finisterre.
I think
Why not others?
So I think that there are plenty of ways to sort of address this, and unfortunately a lot of it does come down, like I said at the beginning, to like the bottom line and profit margins. One of the things that I always come back to with any design brief anyone that comes to me with a design brief is, what is the purpose of this product? What do you need it to do? And like, how do you make it fulfill its job, like for as long as it possibly can in the form that it is in? So that should always be the kind of core thing at the brief, that when you're designing any product, and that doesn't matter whether it's a piece of football kit, whether it's a waterproof jacket, like how do you make it do its job that it's designed for as long as possible? And that does bring in, you know, like not cutting corners when it comes to, oh, I'm not going to squeeze the seam allowance, or I'm going to use like this fabric which is not as durable, but it will mean I can only do like putting loads of stretch in something so that it spans more size ranges rather than doing that kind of thing. And there are ways, as Heather touched on before, about how you know, putting a zip in, if you stitch a zip in, it's going to be easier to repair than if you glue it in. If you put a storm flap over a zip, the jacket maintains some use even if the zip does break temporarily. You know, there are little things like that, and it's very, very specific to whatever the purpose is, but it's designing for the purpose is really, really key.
Interesting.
And I think you can also think about like allowing something to be repurposed. So
great.
like allowing something that has been designed for one thing, just because, like I have this here, I do a bit of repurposing myself. This was it's a bit blurred because of my filter, but it used to be a postman's jacket, and I found it in a charity shop, and it had all the Royal Mail labels taken off it.
Okay.
It had holes in it because of where the labels have been taken out, and I thought, well, who's gonna, you know, so I've repurposed that. Okay, it looks like something someone's going to wear at a festival. Brilliant. It doesn't have a hood anymore. It is not an integral waterproof jacket that it once was, but maybe it has appeal to somebody doing something a bit different, and I think allowing that to be a thing, you know, allowing to facilitate that creativity with something, in the way that at One Tree, the patches that they're creating, they're using waste materials, and they're using those, and they're putting different prints which have got nothing to do with necessarily what the garment was initially designed for, but they allow it to still be used,
giving it a whole different life. And I really like that, because actually more
open to that is important,
because actually sports kit, I think, increasingly has become very, how dare I say it, not creative at all. You know, it's very, you know, boxy t-shirts, you know, it's all the same, isn't it? It's just a different color, different badge, whatever. You know, and Hayley's just put in the chat there, actually, she takes old football shirts and makes bucket hats out of them. So this is great. We had a question, actually, and I'm not sure whether this is entirely linked, but somebody said they'd love to connect with individual or entities that can assist with upcycling netball uniforms and equipment. So that might be one for you, Wendy. So if the person who sent that in before the webinar wants to put their name in the chat, maybe Wendy. But when we use the word upcycling, I'd just be interested to know your views, all of you, because upcycling, I love the concept of upcycling, right? But it always seems very niche and very kind of one-off and not quite as. So when I'm looking at, you know, a cupboard full of stuff from a Prem Rugby club, there is probably, oh gosh, I dread to even think, 400 or 500 pieces of you know, kit at the end of the season. So is upcycling the answer, or is there something else? Is it straight redistribution?
Can I
Yeah, come in on that.
Yeah. So I think if something can be used in the form that it is in, as it is, then it should
Okay.
be. I don't think you should kind of just
No, Heather says the same. Yeah, great rule of thumb.
And also, whatever you are whatever you are making, you should do it with the same principles as if you're designing something with new materials. It needs to be useful, it needs to work, it needs to function. It might have a different function. So this jacket, yeah, like it wasn't waterproof as it was. It's now maybe a festival jacket. It doesn't mean it's not purposeful, but just
no, a bit like Hayley's festival hats. Yeah,
what you don't want to do is go, oh well, I've made like 20 million tote bags out of these things. A tote bag is useful, but how useful is it to have like that many of them and everyone?
Yeah, or I don't know, scarves or napkins or something. Yeah, sometimes
so I think it's making sure that what you make has a value and purpose in the same way as the item had in the beginning when it was designed. And they're like, also upcycling a random selection of stuff is going to give you a different result to if you do have a huge quantity of a similar item.
That's what
you can make things that are similar, like you can follow a pattern if you know you've got like a known quantity of fabric. There's a company in the States in LA called the Sue Sew Shop who do that very well. In terms of they'll collect items, not specifically sportswear, but they will repurpose bulk amounts of items into similar garments.
Interesting.
Yeah. It depends what you're dealing with. Like somebody doing it like myself as a kind of on a very small scale in my own studio is very different to somebody who has access to multiple machines and a huge studio and has the storage to take, multiple rugby shirts, for example.
Yeah, but that scale needs looking at, doesn't it? I think, because I think what we've got here is, in the chat, loads of great examples and loads of great ideas. But we do need to deal with that scale. Yeah, Wendy.
Yeah, so just on that point, we get stuff that's either donated or sent in to us that, is not saleable, and it's not because there's nothing wrong with it. It's maybe because it's got somebody's number or name on the back. So we have a service where we call it a kit match. So if we've got schools or somebody wants to get a 5-a-side team together, or they're looking for 5 t-shirts or 6 pairs of shorts or whatever, and they're happy that it may have a number or a name on there, we will send it out free of charge to them, because there's no point in us we don't want to move that from somebody's warehouse to our warehouse. It's actually just get it out there. So in that instance, there's nothing wrong with the kit at all. And if it gives somebody, the opportunity to kick a ball around at the weekend and set up a new team, or schools where, there's a lot of kids going to school, they haven't got kit, they haven't got PE kit. If we can get some of that stuff out there, that, we're not sort of upcycling it effectively, but we're not reselling it either, but it still has plenty of life, then that is a great solution. And we've had great feedback from doing that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a solution. So I've had discussions with coaches of junior rugby teams, for example, and others are probably in other sports where membership fees are going up and up and up, and I'm like, okay, so you pay your membership fee and then you've got to buy all the kit, and I'm like, that's just excluded a whole chunk of people from playing grassroots sport, right?
Yeah.
And so most clubs maybe have a boot bin or whatever, but there's no, there's also this sort of shame around it as well. Or, you've got to all have the same kit. My kids are always in whatever kit I can find that morning. So we sort of buck that trend a little bit. But I do think there's a cultural thing here to say, actually, we'd have 20 more members if we just made the kit free, and everyone sort of runs around in the kit. And lots of clubs, you have a game shirt, which the club owns. So they look smart on game day, but don't have to buy this whole stuff just for training and whatever. So love that, Wendy. I really love, what you're doing. Sam's asked a question. I think I'm going to come to Abina. Abina, reusing is great. An entire economy centered around thrift, and discarded kits in Europe can be reused. So how good are these links? So there's a couple of things here about, Heather, you mentioned donated kit going overseas, and it looks like Abina, sorry if I had to pronounce your name, and others are saying yeah, we want your kit. How does that work? Because there's a positive and a negative there.
There's a bit of tension there. So
Yeah.
So you're right. They're in places like Accra. There are huge markets, and people earn a living from selling the secondhand gear. So, but obviously that secondhand gear needs to be of good quality. It needs to be culturally desirable, like specific to them. Like it's very pointless us sending ski jackets to Ghana, which is what is happening.
Right, it all gets dumped in a bale, I guess.
Yeah, because it just gets bundled up. And the other problem with it is that these donations, people put them in donation bins, like in supermarket car parks or at their local tip. And what happens is a lot of this stuff isn't washed. Some of it's got holes in. Like the vast majority of a bundle cannot even be resold. So, and that has to then be disposed of somehow. And the problem is that, you know, places like Accra don't have those disposal facilities.
Okay.
And that's where the problem comes from.
I can add in there as well that I've worked in my I've been into my local Salvation Army shop and helped with sort because it was like, well, we'll take some of this stuff that you cannot sell and we will repurpose it and make it into something that you can. But the people who are doing the sorting, they're like mostly volunteers, and they don't actually, like, the way that somebody with garment making or a creative eye will look at a piece and go, yeah, I can do something with that. It's not the way that somebody who has got like a huge bag of stuff, of donations to sort through, they're going to go, that's ripped, that's, you know, wrong season, somebody hasn't washed that, and they have to be quick, and because they're dealing with so much stuff. So I think the sorting and the selection process is something which I don't have the answer of how you improve that, other than paying people to do it. Like, make it a thing that someone can actually earn money doing, rather than just, you know.
I can recommend a trip to the Oxfam sorting centre, and I think it's in Milton Keynes. It might be Leamington Spa, but I went there once, and it's a whole warehouse full, and they sort into, I'm going to say, sort of 80 fractions or something, but it's really well sorted. So you'll have everything from like wedding dresses over there to, you know, ski jackets or whatever. And Oxfam were one of the first to move to online, you know, online sales, whereas most charity shops rely on, you know, footfall. And so I think they've really been more sophisticated with that model. Now, whether they clean things, I know they steam things because there was an area there, but they'll also be looking for brand labels. You know, there's a certain, the cream they call it, don't they? Okay, so this sounds really interesting, and thanks for keeping the things going in the chat. Sort of, where do we go next? What would you like to see? Wendy, I'm going to come to you, and then Heather. What would help you scale this? What has to happen next?
We just one very quick thing on the kit charter. Actually, it's really interesting conversation. You have to sort of set expectations, and from a customer point of view, at the end of the day, Kit Round is it's a consumer facing marketplace. So what we put on that site has to be desirable. People want to pay for it, and all of that. The stuff that comes into us, where your point you were making about Salvation Army, you have to make a decision on what you do with that. And we have a team who sort through that kit, and we look for things like snags or labels cut out or non-sporting brands, all that sort of stuff. The challenge then comes is, okay, so we've got X amount we can put on the site, and we can unlock what we call the currency in that kit, because then that goes on to do, you know, all the good stuff that we want to do. There is then some other stuff that talks about kit match, where we can't list it, but we can send it on. Have some items where, you know, they really are what we call end of life, you know, and that's the challenging bit for us, is, you know, is finding solutions. And we have found some businesses where we can send football boots off that get broken down, because Akito is the company, you know, and they make new football boots. So there are solutions out there, and I think there are some really good things happening around sort of kit charters. I know somebody's mentioned UEFA, but I know a lot of the local sort of smaller clubs are trying to do some really good stuff in that space. And so for us, back to your original question, you know, scale for us is just about it's getting the name out there of Kit Round. It's letting people know. And I think pre the call, you know, Heather sort of said to me, "Well, how did I not know about you before?" You know, we really are on the beginning of our journey, and as soon as people find us, then that's it. You know, the relationship starts.
Good.
Whether that's they're supplying, they want to sell kit, they want to set up a kit shop. So it's for us, it's about that, getting the name out, getting people working with us, finding solutions to whatever they're trying to achieve, whether it's a sustainable solution, whether it's a revenue, whether it's participation in their sport, or it's simply mum and dad have cleared out the wardrobe and it's like, can we just get rid of this stuff, please? You know. So yeah, there's lots of different conversations, and the partnership stuff for us. We had a partnership with David Lloyd, which was a really, really big partnership for us, and Visa and a few of these other big guys are coming to the table and they want to work with us to find solutions, which is an amazing achievement.
Yeah, I think that's the key. You know, it's great to know that you're working with a couple of those key partners, because I get the impression that people see it, and it's a bit of a brand embarrassment sometimes. It's a bit like, oh, that doesn't look great, all that waste, and people know the story, Heather, about stuff turning up, etc., etc. And I think it was particularly schools. Anyone with school kids will know there's an annual kind of raft of messages from parents saying, where can I, you know, reuse this? And what do you mean I need new uniform and all that stuff? So it's a universal problem. And I think the more we can do to connect each other and maybe support each other on that kind of sharing and prodding and kind of saying, why aren't we doing this, local grassroots club? That would be great. Heather, what do you think we need? What will help escalate this from small scale to big scale?
Do you know what? I actually think everyone on this call told us what we needed right at the start in that poll, because they said two things. They said,
we haven't come back to legislation yet, have we?
They said repairability, which Becky talked about, and they said legislation. And when it comes to legislation, I think that's absolutely true. We need brands to be held accountable. We need what's called extended producer responsibility schemes, which means that brands have to basically pay a tax to deal with what happens to those products at the end of their life. And what I think should happen with that tax is that it should go into it shouldn't go into like big repair centres. What it should go into are community initiatives that exist within everyone's communities, that so that there is somebody, and you will know who it is in your community, or you might know 10 people in your community that you could go to and say, could you fix my rucksack? Could you repair this? Could you do this? Or can you teach me how to do this? So investing in like education and repair structure, but at a community level.
Can I add something in there? Because one of the things I think is that I think you often get people within communities who recognise a problem, but they don't have the relevant knowledge and experience to solve that problem. As a freelance designer, I get a lot of people coming to me who go, oh, I want to start a clothing brand, and they know nothing about the clothing industry, and they need somebody who can explain how things work, you know, and this is what you're going to have to do. And a lot of the time it comes as a great shock, or they don't realise, you know, the amount of work or whatever. And I think that's the same with all of this stuff. Like, if you want to talk about repurposing clothing, speak to people who can stitch and sew and make clothing, you know, like there's an awful, I'm not saying that you can't give something a go yourself without the skills. I know that, like, you know, but I think you can find the people and connect the dots so that someone can say, well, how do I repair this technical jacket? Yes, you can do a do-it-yourself repair, but you can also have somebody within the community who has that knowledge. And then to Heather's point about funding those people, so it doesn't have to be, oh, well, I'll just let you have this out of the goodness of my heart. Like, if someone has learned many skills and spent years honing those and they want to share that, we live in a society where people need money and they need to be compensated for their kind of work. And I think that that's really important. And I think being able to do that on a local community level, like I've done repair workshops locally here, and usually people are like, oh, well, we can pay you a little bit of money, and they're always really apologetic because they haven't got the money to pay what they would like to. And I think using that money, as Heather said, that comes in for those kind of projects is really important, so that people can benefit from the knowledge and experience of experts or experienced people.
It sounds like we all need to be very aware and very active, and I know that's the whole point about reaction, you know, and getting people, because EPR is coming in, you know, in now, and we need to be ready, maybe, Heather, almost to prevent the kind of, oh, we're going to start this big central place in, you know, where everything's going to get sucked into and most of it will be incinerated or whatever, you know, because it's not viable. And actually investing in our local communities, which is the holy grail, I think, Heather.
I think it's moving in the right direction now. I was just reading the Cotswolds impact report this morning, because that's what I do for fun.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, they are investing in repair in their shops. They're investing in collecting secondhand gear. So I would say that if you've got a bag of stuff that you're going to donate to charity, take the sports stuff out and donate it to a specialist place, whether that's an organisation like Wendy's who can then resell it, or somewhere that can, you know, there's still a lot of R&D that needs to be done on these materials to work out what can be done. So, for example, ski boot manufacturers are collecting ski boots willy-nilly because they're like, we need to work out what we can do with them, and to you know, and to break down the materials and see what parts of it can be reused, but they need a sort of a collateral of gear to be able to do that. So there's yeah, if you can donate things or resell them as in as specialist place as possible, it will ensure that they will get reused in the best possible way.
I think that's right. And I mean, this webinar is about sports kit and obviously outdoors, etc., etc. But you're right. If we were talking about wedding dresses, and as someone who still has a 20-year-old wedding dress because I can't find anyone to take it, I'm not chucking it. You know, so keep it in its niche, I think, is really good advice, Heather, because those people in that industry, you know, people like Wendy and others know what to do with it, and they know the outlets. Once you just donate it to charity, I guess it's just going to get muddle up.
I think to add to that, if I could, as consumers, the consumers are very savvy. You know, a lot of consumers are very savvy, and we've done a few pop-up shops and we've done a few events where nobody even asks, you know, is this pre-game, pre-loved, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's as far as they're concerned, it is a pair of football boots and they're £15. And if I went to a sports shop, they cost me 75 quid.
Yeah, 100%.
So, you know, I think the consumer is you only have to look at some of the stuff that's gone on nationally, you know, with Marks and Spencer's and eBay recently and some of the big brands. You know, consumers, it's just, I'd love a day where you just either walk into a store or go online and you're buying something because it's what you want and it's the right price and it's something you want to wear. The fact that whether it's pre-loved or pre-gamed or whatever is irrelevant. It's your purchase, it's what you want to buy and the story that sits behind it. And I think as consumers now, we're all, people aren't so, you know, they're aware of what they're buying, but they're buying it for a reason a lot of the time as well, a positive reason. They get the story.
Absolutely right. And we hear everywhere about cost of living. And I come back to this point about win-wins. You know, there's so many wins. Heather said about the social and the skills and putting money back into your community. There's so many wins. So it feels like we've, you know, and this is often the story with consumerism, and we've kind of been duped into this thing, like you have to have this, you have to have that. And then there's this whole, dare I say it, majority of people who say, I just need some boots, you know, I just need my kids to have the right, some socks, you know. So I think there's a bit here, and I'm going to sort of, my call to action for everybody who's still here is to kind of challenge a little bit, you know, challenge the rules that you have to have this and that. Say, look, can't we do something different next time? So we haven't mentioned it today, but Forest Green Rovers, for example, a football a club in the UK, have moved to a kit that will last 2 seasons. Right, now that doesn't sound like a big deal, but actually that's halving probably the amount of kit that is going to be, you know, produced or wasted. And for me, more importantly, it sends a signal that says it's okay for a club at that level to have the same kit 2 years running. Now, I don't know how they're getting around sponsorship. They must have, as Becky said, they must have tied that in or whatever, but really important. So if we can start sending those signals out, like you're doing, Heather, that actually this is pretty cool. I love wearing this because it says it's got this message. Or Wendy, like you're saying, you know, actually we got this kit for free. You know, that's hundreds of pounds that a grassroots club can spend on something else.
Yeah.
You know, goalposts or whatever it be. So maybe, yeah, I would just say, and if anyone's got any final thoughts, I'd love to hear them. But for me, let's be a bit more challenging as to what we've been told or fed or sold is the right idea. And Rebecca, you started us off with that right from the beginning. Thank you, everyone. It is the top of the hour and a few people have to go. Hayley's just popped into the chat. I did a podcast on textiles and a lot of this stuff came up right at the beginning when I started the podcast last year. So thank you for popping that in, Hayley. And if anyone's got any questions, obviously come back to us via LinkedIn. Thanks for joining, everyone. There will be a recording that will go out in about a week's time. So if you're able to share that with colleagues who couldn't make it today, then we'd really appreciate it. Keep in touch, everyone. Thank you to my amazing panel. Akanksha?
Thank you, Emma. Thank you to the amazing panel and I would say amazing discussion. I think everybody was agreeing to everything what was discussed, and I would like to thank the audiences for keeping engaged and sharing their insights over the chat as well. As Emma already mentioned, this recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel and on our website in a week's time. And if you'd like to stay updated on our future events, and if you'd like to have any suggestions on the kind of topics that you want to cover, then please do let us know and subscribe us to our newsletter and follow us on social media. Thank you and good day to all.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you. Thanks.